Legendia is one of the few amusement parks in Poland. It's located right in the heart of Katowice, which is on the western side of the country. It opened in 1959, but it was under a different name. It was called the Silesian Amusement Park. Sorry if I mispronounced that. It was known as that park for quite some time, but didn't have like a ton of attractions, definitely not quality attractions. Actually, most of those are thanks to a closed amusement park in Denmark that they purchased over 24 attractions from. For a while there, all they were really known for was a giant Ferris wheel and the Devil's Loop roller coaster. But in 2015, the Tetry Mountain Resorts came in from Slovakia and purchased the property with a plan to invest about 27 million US dollars into the park. And so with that came a rebranding. So the park was renamed Legendia. For the 2017 season, they brought in Lech Coaster, so that gave them that signature ride that they needed. They also redid the front entrance and built rides like the Rapids and a really cool interactive dark ride called Basilisk. And so from what I've been told, the park is still in that transition period. And let me just say, it shows. This is a weird park. There is a lot of land, and a lot of that is just empty space. You have some areas that are pretty nice, and some areas that look like they have not been touched in years. And you look at it and you're like, ugh, like that needs to go. And then you add that in with the fact that the one time that I went here, the park was empty. It was an absolute ghost town. Now, I'm sure it's not like that all the time, but it's not like I went during like a random time of year. It was on a weekday, but it was in the heart of summer, nice weather, schools were out, but no one was here. Why is that? I'll give you one word: Energylandia. When this park originally opened, Energylandia wasn't even a thing. That park didn't open until 2014. They're located about an hour away from Energylandia near Auschwitz, kind of in between Katowice and Krakow. And most of the big rides that are at that park didn't come until after Legendia built Lech Coaster, and the park was like, oh crap, we gotta compete. And so they're like, boom, Hyperion, and then Zadra and Abyssus, all that good stuff. So now, if you live in this side of Poland and you want to go to an amusement park, which are you going to choose? Well, probably Energylandia. They just stomped all over Legendia. I mean, when Lech Coaster opened, that was the tallest and largest roller coaster in Poland, but now it's not even close. They just completely stole all their audience. So now it makes me wonder, how much more investment is this park gonna get? Because all the changes that this company made have been great so far. The newer areas look nice. So let's walk through some of this. So as I mentioned, the park is located right in the heart of the city. There's literally a train station right across from the front entrance, which makes it super easy to access if you're taking public transit. We had a car, so we just parked in the parking lot and walked over. Right away, one of the first things you'll see that's very different is there is a giant crane next to the park, and it's not because they're building anything. It is actually an attraction where they take you up in a basket and you bungee jump off the top. It's not part of Legendia, they're their own separate thing, but it was not open when we were there. And honestly, I'm not sure I would have done it anyways, because the building right next to it was like covered in graffiti and looked very sketchy. So that was definitely interesting. If you didn't know, Legendia is not the only attraction in this area. It's actually this big open like community park called Silesian Park. There's a zoo, they got a planetarium and a medieval village, all of which is great because personally I did not think that Legendia was a full day destination, but maybe if you tied in with some of this other stuff, you could make a full day out of everything. I would say in total, maybe we were there for like 4 hours, but if you're just going for like a credit run, I mean, you could be out of here in less than 2. You got your very modern front entrance, very colorful, nice design. You walk in and there's your main street. Lots of classic, charming buildings. Great way to make a first impression. And then you're greeted with your lake in the center. And this is when you realize how big Legendia actually is. The park's pathways go all the way around this lake, and so it makes for some really nice photo ops. The main one, of course, being Lech Coaster, which is located all the way in the back. This lake does make for some cool opportunities, though. You can actually take a little boat out onto the water, and it's not an upcharge. Although on the day we went, we didn't see anyone out on the water, so it might have been temporarily closed. Towards the front of the lake, we saw some sad water features. I feel like they were trying to be cool and grand, but it wasn't really working at all, especially since you could actually see where the water was coming from. Like, the platforms were above water, not below, which is not usually how it's supposed to go. You could see a tower there, so it might have been for like a specific show, but of course that was not going on when we were there, or if it's literally just left over from something that closed years ago. Now I would say it's about here that you start to notice that the front entry area is a little deceiving because the rest of the park is not as nice as that section. From here you can go either to the left or to the right. We chose to go to the left. It was here where we saw some rundown rides, several attractions just not operating, some like playground equipment randomly thrown in there. This looked to be like a temporary venue that was just really out of place. seats and lots of empty room, just space where you can tell that it's like, okay, this would be perfect for future expansion. The problem is, until they do that, the park is way too big for the number of rides they currently have, because it is very strange when you're walking down these real wide pathways and there's just nothing there. And I think with some parks that works, like I think about Efteling. Huge park, many areas where there's just no attractions, but it's okay because Efteling is beautiful. I would not call Legendia beautiful. Like at times, some areas straight up look abandoned. Like if you continue down this pathway, this area right here clearly used to be for a ride, but now it's just a hangout area. Like, what happened? It's stuff like this that is just all over the park that does not help with the atmosphere. So I'll mention some of the rides that we did do. The first one we got to was this very bizarre plane ride that like spins around in circles. I hadn't ever done something quite like that. It took a while to get going, but once we were spinning, I mean, we were actually going pretty fast. So very unique attraction there. You'll encounter a Ferris wheel. This has a really great view of the surrounding area. It's pretty big, which was impressive. And then right next door, you'll see this big building. And originally we bypassed this because we didn't know anything about it, but we walked in, we saw like a food stand and children's play structure. And originally we thought that was it. But then we took a turn, walked down this pathway. We're seeing what looks to be like a queue and some theming. We're like, what is this? And then we get to the loading area for a trackless dark ride. We're like, what? We had not done any research before coming into Legendia. We had no idea that this ride existed. It was a mix of practical sets and screens. It was a shooting attraction, and it was pretty good. I was very impressed with this. Definitely check it out when you come here. The entrance is right near the big wheel. The first roller coaster we got to is one of 2 Zyklon Galaxies in the park. Yeah, you heard that right. So what's the deal here? Well, this one's called Dream Hunters Society. The other one is called Scary Toys Factory, which, by the way, is the worst name for a kid's ride ever. Sounds like a terrifying film that I would not want my children to watch, but whatever. That attraction has been standing but not operating since 2020, and that's actually the newest of the 2. It was built in 2017 when the park took over. Dream Hunters Society was a previous roller coaster called Cyclone. It was one of the 24 attractions that got moved from Denmark to Poland. They put it in the park and then for whatever reason decided to move it, rename it, repaint it, and now here it is. Yes, I know, very bizarre. It was funny to me how this attraction was operated. It was very carnival-esque. Like you have the ride operators literally like standing on the track. They're like guiding the vehicles along when they hit the brakes and then giving them a push to dispatch. It was just so funny. But as you keep going around, you'll see like a log flume, couple random flats. Then you get to Lech Coaster. That plaza just looks great. And the ride is awesome. There's already a full separate review up on Coaster Studios of Lech Coaster. So be sure to give that a watch if you want to hear about that ride. An attraction you'll see right near Lech Coaster, but is not actually part of Legendia, is the Skyride or gondola that just stretches all the way across. Funny enough, we had no idea that wasn't part of Legendia, so we were looking around for the station so we could ride it. And of course, we never found it because it is outside the park. But if that's something that interests you, I'm sure it gives some great views from above, but you will have to pay separate for it. As you continue moving down the pathway, you'll encounter a rapids that's kind of like above ground, like you aren't looking down on it, which is kind of strange. It's definitely a little bizarre looking. This is one ride that we did not get the chance to do. You'll then get to your final roller coaster that's operating in the park, and that is Devil's Loop. This is what I call a knockoff Schwarzkopf Looper, because it has a very similar layout to Shockwave at Six Flags Over Texas. But unlike Shockwave, the only good parts of this ride are the vertical loops. It also happens to have a backwards facing row, which is very strange. So of course, I made sure to ride this ride forwards and backwards. The coaster might as well end after the vertical loops, because that helix that it does is just very janky and pointless. Very odd experiencing it backwards, but it was fun. I mean, something unique. You'll see a couple more rides in that plaza. Definitely a bizarre mix, because you see some that are very carnival-esque. Like the loading platforms look very temporary. It just makes for an odd atmosphere, because then right next to those temporary feeling rides, you then get to the bathrooms, which are actually pretty well themed. It's like, what? What is this place? And then to complete your loop, you're once again walking on a pathway where there's not much there. Prime real estate for future attractions, including that land that Scary Toys Factory is on. And that's Legendia. I like to describe this park as Poland's Marineland. Have you ever heard of this park in Canada? It's located in Niagara Falls. And like Legendia, it is absolutely huge with not a ton of rides, many of them feeling very temporary, way more land than they know what to do with, and likewise, not a lot of guests in the park. So it was definitely reminiscent of that, but I do think Legendia is overall the better park because it actually has some areas that look nice, and I don't know if I would say that about Marineland. So I hope that we get some more investment into this park in the future because I feel like it has potential, but we haven't really seen anything new the past couple years, and it just needs some TLC, and it got it right when the park was acquired by this other company, but it seems like their investment cycle is over. They're realizing that Energylandia is outdoing them in just about every way, and so I don't know if they've just given up or they ran out of money to reinvest into the park. But I hope that this isn't it for Legendia. It's cool to see what Energylandia is doing, but I'd hate for this park to close because no one's going there. I mean, if that does one day happen, I hope they'll at least relocate Lech Coaster. That's by far the best part of this park. We ended up staying there for most of our day and just rewriting that thing over and over and over again. It was so fun. Everything else outside of the dark ride wasn't really memorable. So overall, I would say that I'm not a huge fan of this park, at least in its current state, but I have to recommend that you go here if you're a coaster enthusiast visiting Poland because they have Lech Coaster. The ride is that good that yes, you should come here to ride it. And even though I didn't love the park, I'll probably still come back here so I can ride Lech Coaster again. I hate to say it, but if they didn't have Lech Coaster, I'd probably say skip this place. So let me know down in the comments below what you think of Legendia in Katowice, Poland. Do you agree with the points that I brought up? If you think there's anything I missed, let me know down below. And stay tuned for more park reviews here at Coaster Studios. We'll see you next time.